What's going on, everybody? It is your boy Zamboni. I'm a musician and astrologer, and it is time to talk about the astrology of the week ahead. As always, so thank you so very much for being here. Thank you for rocking with me. Another time, thank you for going to ZamboniFunk.com, where you can get a reading, where you can get a 10-minute reading like this, where I sort of like talk about what's going on and send you a little video about what's going on with you and your chart. Or you can get a 60-minute reading, like a Zoom chat, where we talk together about what's going on for you and sort of like work things out. That's available at ZamboniFunk.com/store. Especially, there's also merch there available. This is new artwork which represents the music that I've made recently. So thank you for going to Spotify, Tidal, Pandora, Apple Music, wherever you get your podcast, or wherever you get your music at, and listening to my music there. I also have a podcast, as you can tell. It's called What Is the Time, in the same places, Spotify and Apple Podcasts and all this kind of thing. Thank you so much for rocking with me and being with me all this time. Let's talk about the astrology of the week ahead. So this week, we have a couple of important things going on here. First, we can see that Mercury has finally stationed direct. So Mercury has been retrograde in Virgo there for a long time. And this past week, in the last couple of days here, the Mercury stationed direct. So it's time for Mercury to start moving forward again. You know, it has been a rough time for the Mercury things, especially that the stuff in Virgo has been like really weird and feeling like kind of grumpy, and it's been difficult to get things going. You know, even though Venus had stationed direct after being retrograde for several weeks, there was still a sense of like not quite being able to move forward on the thing. This week, Mercury is applying to a trine to Jupiter. And so even though that's not going to perfect this week, that'll be at the beginning of next week that we'll see that aspect perfect. Those two are mutually applying at this point. So Jupiter is retrograde in Taurus, and so moving backwards, and Mercury is moving forward in Virgo, and so they're like sort of coming together and they're looking toward an aspect. So this looks like a time that can be like lucky for Mercury. It can be a good time for Mercury to do the things. So Mercury in Virgo is opposite to Saturn in Pisces as well as Neptune. And so that looks like it can be difficult for the Mercury things. It looks like things want to be sort of delayed or troublesome or confused or something like this, especially Mercury in Virgo really likes things to be organized and well understood and intelligible and this kind of thing, right? And so those aspects can be difficult for Mercury. But the main thing that we see going on this week is that mutual application to a trine to Jupiter. So not only is it Jupiter, who is our greater benefic, but also it's a trine, which is an aspect which is supportive and friendly and helpful and this kind of thing. So to see that sort of situation going on definitely looks like the Mercury stuff, which will include planning, which will include communications of any sort. So if you want to talk to somebody about how the thing is going to go, maybe you want to get your teamwork, maybe you want to get your team all together on the same page and like work up a plan for everyone to follow as we move forward on things, then that is going to be a good thing to do this week. There might be a little bit of extra wind in the sails, and then seeing that trine from Jupiter means that maybe some of those difficulties from the opposition, and opposition to Saturn can sometimes be like rough, or it can be some kind of stopping point, right? But Saturn is also the planet of infrastructure and boundaries and this kind of thing. One of the things I talk about a lot with clients is the difference between boundaries and barriers, right? So you can build, and so like if we think about Saturn in Pisces, that's like under the water, right? So we can think about building a tunnel under the water so that the water doesn't get in and mess up your transportation, but you can move things and people and ideas back and forth, right? So that's a possibility. And to see that Jupiter, who wants to help out, it looks less like barriers and obstruction to what you're trying to do, and more like, okay, so can we generate some infrastructure? Same way an opposition to Neptune can be like a little confusing, and it can be like lethargic or this kind of thing, but it's also dreamy and imaginative. So to see that trine from Jupiter that sort of like wants to give us the thumbs up on things might be a situation here where we can sort of use the dreamy, imaginative nature of Neptune in the service of the planning. Like it's like sort of like a dream it and then you can do it sort of situation here. So it's a good week for working up those kinds of plans. Now we do see that Mars is in Libra right now, right? And so the sun this week is going to move into Libra. That's right. It is time for the autumnal equinox in my area. This is like a major seasonal shift. And so we're going to move toward but we're sort of like entering a new quarter of the year and moving toward a different season, and things look like they sort of like want to be oriented in a different direction, especially now that we've been through the Venus retrograde and we've been through the Mercury retrograde. It's maybe time to sort of like start out in a new direction here. So to see the sun moving into Libra, the sun is not very comfortable in Libra. The sun, it's the sun's job to sort of like shine out and be like, all right, here I'm the center and it's time, and I've got this like center of gravity and kind of something authoritative, right? Whereas Libra tends to be a little bit more on the sort of like, okay, well, what do you think about it? And maybe we can sort of like hash it out by committee or something like this, right? And so the sun isn't necessarily super strong in this position. Also, Mars is there in Libra. Mars is opposite to its domicile, and so in an uncomfortable position and not super able to do the Mars things comfortably. Now, what we do see here that is helpful in the event of like trying to move forward and do some stuff and like get it popping in the way that the sun and Mars typically like to do, especially when they get together, that tends to be something that like wants to move and push and like get excited about stuff, right? So to see these aspects or these planets here in Libra, also with the South Node is typically a place of release and like getting rid of things, right? So this is an uncomfortable position for both of these planets, but they are making a sextile to Venus in Leo. And in fact, Mars is just sextile to Venus in Leo the whole week long. So Venus is going to make this square to Jupiter. Again, that Jupiter looks like it wants to help. It wants to bring us nice things that look sort of like prosperous, fruitful, helpful in some kind of way. But then to see that Venus consistently sextile is going to be one of our sort of complementary aspects, right? It's going to be one of the ones where things kind of, it's both peanut butter and jelly, right? Those things, they like go together in this nice way. That's kind of how a sextile works. Like the fire of Leo can feed the air, or the air of Libra can feed the fire of Leo, right? And not only that, but Venus rules Libra. So there's to see this soft aspect, which is associated with Venus, between Mars and Venus, looks like, even though Mars is kind of uncomfortable, Mars has some direction. And really that's one of the things that like Mars often needs. Mars needs a direction or a reason to do stuff, right? And so to see Venus in Leo moving forward again and making this sextile to Mars looks like, okay, so there's been some stuff that we have been looking at for the past few years, or for a few months here with the Venus retrograde. And even after the Venus retrograde stopped, we still had that Mercury retrograde. So there's still plenty of like, I don't know how I feel about it. Maybe I need to reflect on this a little further, right? Now to see Mercury and Venus moving forward again looks like a moment, and with this Mars here as well, it looks like a moment where it's like, okay, maybe I can devise an action that can be beneficial to me in some kind of way. So although it doesn't look like super authoritative, like handling business sort of stuff, which, we can think about Venus and Leo as having gone through a situation where it's like, well, what do I really think about this? What do I really feel about all this? And maybe, Venus in this position, this is our morning star Venus, right? So Venus will rise before the sunrise, right? So first, I definitely would check that out. But so that's a position that tends to be a little more aggressive with the Venus things. And so then to see this aggressive looking Venus making a sextile to Mars, who tends to be aggressive already, who is also in the Venus space, does look like a moment where we want to push on stuff. We want to see if we can get it moving, but then also in a way that might sort of like speak to how we can get teamwork, togetherness, cooperation, collaboration, all this kind of stuff to kind of work together in a way that it maybe hadn't been working before the Venus retrograde, right? So like we can think about what was going on before the Venus retrograde, how we might want to move like what kind of goals we want to move toward that we've been thinking with during Mercury retrograde, and then think about ways to actually make that happen. So this is a good week for that. Thank you so much for rocking with me. I'll see you next week.